Good morning. This is Jim Patterson with EPM Live. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we're going to be talking about the topic of extending your project server environment into an all-work solution, managing all different types of work. This is a capability that's brought by EPM Live with its products, and one of the things that we do is extend Project Server to bring it more capabilities in this area. Because the reality is that work and different work types are everywhere within an organization, whether it be project or non-project work for that matter. As you go through the life cycle of a project, there are the project tasks that people are used to managing, say, in their Microsoft project schedules that they may be storing and creating in Project Server. But there's all other kinds of actionable, assignable work that gets put on people's plates through the execution of projects and other works that competes with time for projects and people's efforts. So just within a project, whether they be lower level action items or to-dos, whether they be change requests, whether they be deliverables or other items, issues that are tackled on within a project, we need to deal with those and bring those to successful completion just like any other piece of assignable work within the work mix. And then when we start getting into things like more iterative development, using Agile, etc., you have things like backlog items. And then on operational work, you've got things like service requests and other things like that that need to be taken care of in tickets. The idea is, what do we do with all this work? And can we extend Project Server to be able to incorporate total workload? And so we can manage work and resources across all of that. Because today, typically in organizations, we find that these are being done with disconnected systems and processes. So whether you do your traditional project management in Project Server, it'll handle certain aspects of that. But from an application or product development perspective, Agile approaches using things like user stories, defects, features, other things to manage backlog items so that you can actually put things into iterations or sprints to manage those things. Those are generally handled in separate applications as well that are disconnected from what you're doing with traditional project management. And then operationally, service management with service requests and tickets and things like that, those most often are handled in a separate system. And the idea is how can we bring this together using a combination of tools, but then bring it into a common form that we can work in together. So here on the left-hand side, Project Server has always done a very good job of managing the traditional project work and the task assignments that come out of project schedules. Plans are built in Microsoft Project. They're published to Project Server. They're made available for people to work on collaboratively. But all the other types of work that I'm describing, all that other type of work that's not project tasks, traditional project task related, really doesn't get dealt with as assignable work as part of people's total workload really in that type of system. Leveraging SharePoint at a core to do those types of things is really what we're doing with EPM Live. And being able to really extend Project Server to incorporate all work truly as work items and as workloads so that we can manage it in total is something that we can do to enhance the Project Server experience. So Project Server on the right here is something that can be deployed obviously in a standalone mode and do what it does best. It has its own architecture. It publishes the tasks out for collaborative interaction and viewing. And it does leverage SharePoint from a workspace perspective to do things like collaborative things like documents and issues, etc. But treats them a little bit differently from a work perspective. What we do is we try to bring these things together with WorkEngine so that all of the Project Server work, the tasks from your schedules, etc., from Microsoft Project and PWA, also get published out into the SharePoint environment and be intermingled and worked on in conjunction with other work like backlogs, like service requests, like defects and deliverables, and treat them all as assignable work. So when you're looking at people's workload or an organization's workload, it's factoring in all the competing elements that are competing for people's time and effort. And WorkEngine is the piece that brings that all together. Essentially, when Project Server gets published, and you publish a schedule, that information is getting published to the project server database, but in conjunction is also getting published into the mix in SharePoint with all the other work that we're going to be managing. And the idea is that WorkEngine keeps all that in sync and allows you to have more of a total all-work experience. So essentially, when you publish your projects and it gets out to SharePoint, the data is going to project workspaces or other types of workspaces to manage other work. So more traditional workspaces for projects or for product development with more agile services, or even more vertical types of templates that might do things for things like construction or other types of project work that's out there. The idea is that when we publish that project server data out, the data that's in there gets pushed out to SharePoint. It also allows us then to intermingle things that we're doing uniquely within the EPM Live tool sets, and primarily in here our WorkEngine tool, where our Agile Work Planner will actually allow you to create backlog items and allow you to plan releases and iterations or sprints and capture your user stories, your defects, and your features, and be able to plan them in those iterative fashions, not in that Microsoft project-oriented type of waterfall planning. The key here is if we do these with these systems in conjunction, we can do a combination of traditional waterfall projects and our more agile, iterative development efforts all within the same tool set. The idea here being as we assign people to these types of backlog items in an agile approach, it becomes a part of their workload just like any other task would be, say, in Project Server. The idea being that when a user is looking at their work or a functional manager is looking at their people's work, they can see a combination of this agile work with the work coming from Project Server in the traditional waterfall tasks. Also, from a service management perspective, we can actually create service requests or capture service requests from other systems as well. And the idea being workload on this more operational, unplanned work that may come about can be put into the mix as well. So we can gather and analyze and track all your service requests, but this will also be intermingled with the tasks that are coming from Project Server. So once again, we're adding another type of work to the mix, but it's really becoming part of the total workload for our resources and for our organization. Now, we have a lot of pre-built workspace templates. But given the SharePoint nature of what we're doing with EPM Live, we have a lot of different templates already pre-built, but you can actually tailor these specifically to methods, work processes, and just approaches that you're taking within your organization. So these are good jumping off points. People can actually manage using these templates from day one, but they're highly configurable so that you can really tailor them to the specific needs of your organization and be able to get this up and running quickly. In these project workspaces is really the hub of where we're managing everything about a project or a unique effort, like product development or some service management area. And the idea here being that we're managing tasks, resources, issues, risks, change requests, action items, anything that's assignable or trackable within a project can be done in this one place. So instead of having a separate place to go for your schedule, for example, right here in the workspace is where that would all happen in our solution. So meaning, whether we build a plan in Microsoft Project, whether we build it in our Agile Planner, or whether we build it in EPM Live's own project planner, which is a lighter weight web-based planner to do waterfall scheduling, or actually putting data in regular SharePoint lists, that information is going to get into SharePoint, and it's going to be leveraged by EPM Live's WorkEngine tool. So then when you look at, say, a task or schedules area within your project workspace, it can be a project that was created in Project Server, but even though that data is in the Project Server database, you could, in conjunction, view it and edit it in SharePoint and WorkEngine, but also have it intermingled with other plans and work items that are being created specifically in EPM Live. The benefit of doing all that, and why would we add this, is just from a resource management focus, you can look at resource capacity versus demand now across all work. This would include project server assignments that were made with the Microsoft project schedules that were generated, and including into that work that was assigned through Agile and through service management and other items that consume time and effort by our resources. So instead of just looking at the waterfall project workload or the Agile workload by itself or the service management workload, we now can look at the aggregate of total workload and what's being asked of our resources and whether or not we have the capacity to deliver given the work that's been assigned. Another thing that we add and enhance in the project server experience is the ability to do interactive what-ifs. Project Server provides some nice views in its resource center on whether or not resources or groups of resources are over or under capacity. But they are static views. Here we can provide a very similar type of experience to enhance what's being done in Project Server and built up from the individual work items. I don't know if you can see here in this graphic, but this is actually an interactive, manipulatable what-if type of scenario where it shows you the histogram of the resources relative over or underutilization. But it's built up from lists of work items that are more than just the project tasks in Project Server. For example, there's a work type column next to the name of the work item that indicates what work type it is. Is it from a task center, meaning is it a project task? In this case, it would be from Project Server. Is it a significant issue that requires time and effort? Could it be a service request? Could it be a backlog item from an Agile plan? The idea is that total workload is now going to be focused into this so I can see capacity versus demand for this resource from the bottoms up of all the work assignments. But here in this view, I can actually try out some things like move some tasks around, see if I can relieve this overallocation, drag and drop tasks into different time frames or to open spaces of availability, and see what might work from that perspective. So the interactive nature is something that we add. It's not just a static view. Also, if we want to assign work in SharePoint with our EPM Live tools, we add some tools in here that make it helpful to understand what people are already committed to before we assign them to yet another piece of work. For example, in this dialog here, I might be looking to assign a resource here, and it says Adam Barr in this one to this issue. We add tools into this mix where we can say check resources, and check resources would actually take what we're looking to do here and the effort we're looking to expend with Adam on this particular issue over whatever period or time frame we want him to do this, and see if we add this to his workload, is he already over or under taxed or over or under capacity at this time frame. So before we complete this assignment, we can get visibility into his existing commitment to see if it even makes sense to assign him to this, or should we be looking for another resource. And we can use the check resources to do that, or our find resources tool to find available resources who can do the work. So nice value-added tool here in helping to prevent inadvertent overallocation. Also, one of the things in our tool set is to really make this easier for the actual end user, the team members, the workers in our organization, the ones that are being assigned all this work. We provide in our solution a My Work area that is really a singular central work bin for each resource. And it basically presents to the resource all of their assignments and all their work items from all across the solution, from multiple workspaces, including Project Server assignments in this mix. So project tasks from Project Server, issues, risks, action items, backlogs, service requests, whatever it might be, all are in one place. So a resource gets one place to go to see what's expected of them and to provide feedback and status on completion. on these things without having to monitor all the individual workspaces that they might be participating in order to do that. So we really bring this to that resource centrally, so it makes it easier to view and manage. We also provide all kinds of things and notifications. Here, the passive reminders are available, and we make them configurable. So Project Server has certain things for tasks and issues and risks out of the box, but we have configurable My Work reminders, so as you add different work types in here, you can present to a user what things are on their plate, what's overdue, and those types of things based on work type. So this is highly configurable to get this type of passive reminder to your users. Also, EPM Live provides a enhanced timesheet capability that extends beyond what Project Server's native timesheet will allow you to do. Essentially, we can report time on all work items, not just on project tasks. So as you can see in the work type column in this timesheet, notice that there's service requests from the service center, action items, tasks, issues, or any item that you determine for your organization as a time reportable element. We can report time against it in this system. Also, another enhancement, things that we leverage, is the ability to report time at any level of detail. For example, in Project Server, you can report time at a project level or at a detailed task level. Well, in a hierarchical work breakdown structure, for example, you may choose that you want to record time maybe at some interim level, like a phase or a gate, something that isn't as granular as a detailed task. If that is the case, we can choose whatever the appropriate level is in your planning hierarchy and make that your chargeable element for reporting time. So there's a lot of flexibility here in adding that, but including the Project Server assignments in here with all the other work being generated within the EPM Live toolset. For more quick-hitting, probably smaller, more granular tasks, let's just say service requests is where this is typically deployed. We provide a work log feature where someone, while working in the task itself, without having to back out and physically go to a formal timesheet screen, can actually report their time against this element right from within the work element itself. On the back end, it's really populating the timesheet for the user, but they never have to leave the task that they're in order to go do that. So this work log feature really makes it expedient, especially when people are working on these shorter duration tasks, to fulfill their obligation and the requirement to report time, but not always have to back out to a timesheet in order to do it. This way, the timesheet will be at least partially populated with these service request items in this case, and then only need to fill in the other items that need to complete out the week when they actually go to the timesheet. So something that makes it a little more expedient for the user. We also add some additional, I'd say, portfolio management capabilities to Project Server as well, as we're really expanding out and extending the horizons of Project Server. In this case, from a portfolio of work that we might generate from Project Server or from within EPM Live itself, we can commingle these items and actually build capacity plans. So long before we have a project schedule, we might want to build a portfolio level capacity plan, whether on an FTE basis or on an hours basis, so that we can actually get an idea at a high level what the resource requirement or the resource ask is going to be for, say, a proposed project. The idea here is we can plan capacity long before we have schedule level detail for these project plans. And it may be something that is more appropriate for something very early on in the life cycle of a project. In that same vein, for these portfolio items and projects, we can actually add cost management. We can actually provide detailed line item cost budgets like you see here for every project or portfolio item in the solution. So for a plan that's being generated, initiated from Project Server, for example, we can have linked and as part of the mix a detailed cost plan that has line item budget detail. building up to a total cost or budget for this project, but really supported and substantiated by line item detail. Here we have a combination of cost categories that you have labor that's built up from a quantity, whether it be FTEs or hours, times a rate to come up with a dollar cost. Also mixed with some categories here that are hard dollar costs like materials and contracts, or it could be T&E or whatever it might be, so that you're entering hard dollars along with things that are built up from units times a rate to cost. At the end of the day, it all tallies up to a total cost for the project, and give you the ability to have different cost types. So here we're planning out a budget, but we could track things like actuals or revised forecast, etc. Also in this mix, we add more interactive capability to Project Server with our what-if modeling capability. Our modeler really allows you to work on scenarios. So say you have a mix like you see here of proposed projects and active projects, and you really want to see what we have the wherewithal to do based on capacity or dollars. And in the mix of the potential projects that you're selecting, you can see in a kind of a heat map format down at the bottom, either on a cost or a resource basis, whether or not we are over or under our ability to deliver on these things. We can deselect lower priority projects. We could slide out in time scale the timeline for these projects to see if we push things out. Could we accommodate these things? And even assess whether or not contracting or hiring the gaps may fill the need for us and be able to quantify those things as well. And once again, this really adds a nice interactive capability where hands-on you can deselect things, you can slide projects around, and save scenarios so that you can come up with a doable approach to managing the projects that you select. EPM Live provides what we call a grid roll-up web part that allows us to take a lot of data from across all of your project workspaces in our solution, and just workspaces in general, and roll up data. So for example, ways that this might be useful is be able to look at, say, all issues across all projects. If I have an issues list in each project workspace, instead of having to go to each individual issues list, I could go, for example, to an issues center and actually look at all active issues across all projects from one location. I could do that, and I could commingle this with issues and risks or change requests or other things that you've got across this solution, and roll up this data into a singular view to make it easy from a higher level to monitor and access the information that would be helpful for us in managing these projects. So a lot of flexible data here and tool sets that we provide, and things that on the SharePoint side of the coin in a project server mix, tools that we can do to make it easier to access data. And we can view any of these lists with a Gantt chart representation. We basically have a Gantt chart format that basically allows you to roll up any list, any hierarchy, and look at it that way within the solution. Also, just from a simplicity perspective, for dynamic and rich charting, EPM Live does provide a chart control web part that allows you to configure, much like you would in an Excel chart, different chart types using different data. In this case, in this example, we'd be using the same charting web part 4 different times on this page, but then configure it by pulling different data, selecting different chart types, figuring out what's the X and Y axis on the column chart and other things like that. And the idea being is it makes it very easy for people to do this type of charting. One of the rationales we have for using this is because charting in the lower tiers of SharePoint, like SharePoint Foundation or SharePoint Standard Server, we provide this tool because it can be used in any level of SharePoint. We also provide some tools just to help administer and really manage this thing better as a solution. We have a custom email alert notification engine that we add into the SharePoint environment. that can set up parameters above and beyond standard project server notifications. We can actually set up different triggers, parameters, and conditions under which alerts would be done. And so we can actually send out and format different sections of an alert that have things like, tasks, issues, risks, items that are coming up in the next 14 days, for example, other things that go way beyond what Project Server and what SharePoint gave you out of the box from an alerts notification perspective. And really helpful if you're going to be managing all these different types of work together. It'd be nice to be able to get those notifications on a regular basis so that you can take a look and see what you might be overlooking or what might be overdue, etc. Also, we provide a lot of out-of-the-box reporting. SQL Server reporting services. We provide a number of templates of pre-built reports, and you can view these through the SSRS viewer or output them to common formats like PDF, Word, and Excel. And the key here is that we have additional reporting that we add value to here that not only include just project work, but also can do reporting on all other types of work, since we're managing a lot of different work types potentially here in the EPM Live solution. Another thing we add is the ability to do snapshot reporting. Our reporting database that incorporates all of the data, not just the project server work, but the data and the other work items that we're generating in SharePoint with our EPM Live tools, we have the ability to take snapshots. So the idea here is that we can routinely take snapshots that are time-stamped so that we can do point-in-time reporting, not just current reporting data elements. And also because we're taking snapshots, it makes it much more possible for us to get good trending and trend reporting and analysis out of the data that we're working on. So one of the values that we add here is to incorporate all of the work and all of the types of work, but then also be able to do point-in-time reporting with snapshotting of our reporting database. So here's an idea where you can take a look at some of the items that may be in your reporting database, or lists or work types, data types that are in there. You can see that when the reports come in and they get snapshotted, there's a time and date stamp to the data. And then we can start really getting some good trending data out of that snapshot information, so we can look at trends over time as opposed to just point-in-time data for what the current data set is, which is what you have when you don't have time phase data like that. Another thing I would say that we add to the mix to help in this all-work approach is the ability from an administrative perspective to centrally manage your standards, your lists and your libraries. The idea is if you want to, say, add a list or a column to Workspaces out in SharePoint today, in your Workspaces, you currently have to go to each individual workspace and make that change with out-of-the-box SharePoint. We actually provide an enterprise synchronization tool to where at the site collection level you can actually create the list or add the column and then actually propagate or push that change down through all the existing workspaces, not just your template, so that it's reflected in future projects that you create, but to retrofit the existing workspaces that are out there. And for folks that have hundreds of workspaces out there for their projects, it can be labor intensive to make a standards change in all of those different workspaces. So this tool greatly enhances the ability to push out changes, or even a work type. A list could be a different type of work, for example, so as we does in this kind of all work theme. I just had someone incorporate a lessons learned list that they wanted to put in their workspaces so they capture lessons learned while the project's active, not just in a post-mortem basis. And very easily they were able to create that lessons learned list at the site collection level and then sync it down to all the existing workspaces. There were several hundred workspaces out there, and they were very quickly able to propagate that and make it available to the existing projects. So with that, I think we'll take a look at some of this in the live software, look at some of these components in here. So our WorkEngine tool for Project Server really incorporates the key components of Project Server, but adds our capabilities to it. So in SharePoint 2010, like you see here, you may be working with a project center from Project Server that has the projects in there that you're working with. Be looking at a resource pool and resource center that you're working with here, and all the other tools and components that you are used to working with in Project Server. But then what we do is we add to the mix things like, our reporting tools and our reporting templates. We add to the mix things like my work area from EPM Live, so that we can actually look at all work, not just project tasks within the solution. We can actually interchange and use components and parts to leverage the core of Project Server, but extend it out to do other things. For example, if I wanted to do more Agile-based planning, I could create a project with an Agile workspace like this one. I can submit defects and user stories or features and incorporate them into the backlog. If I wanted to go into the backlog, I could take a look at the backlog of items that are captured against this product or this piece of software. There could be user stories, epic user stories. You can actually rank them from points and work effort, features, etc., and really put them into that backlog mix so that as you're looking to plan future releases of this product or future iterations of this product, you can choose what we can do and what we can capture in those time-bound sprints or iterations for those projects. So what's nice about this is with EPM Live's Agile Planner, if we were going to plan a specific sprint or release for this particular product, instead of using the traditional precedence waterfall basis, we can look at relevant backlog items in the lower pane here. We can have identified releases and sprints or iterations within those releases so that we can actually look at points capacity and work capacity, for example, of what we can accomplish within any one of these time-bound areas with the team that we have. And then based upon this, for example, in Sprint 1, looks like I have a points capacity of 40 or a work capacity of 400. And let's just say I wanted to take this next item in the backlog, this hardcover case, and say we wanted to actually drag that and make that part of Sprint 1. Now it actually decrements down from the available points and the hours, etc., so that we can actually start filling this up with things that are from the backlog, but within the capacity of our ability to deliver these in that time-bound sprint. Now what's nice about this, larger items like large user stories or epic user stories can be broken down into subordinate items. They could be actually broken down into tasks so that you can subdivide a user story into individual tasks within these sprints and then assign to individual people. The nice part is even through this iterative-based planning, as you assign it to different resources here like Steve Masters, this will become part of their workload. This will become part of their commitment. This will decrement from their availability. It'll go into their My Work area so they can actually see it as part of their total workload. But once again, we're using a more iterative-based type of planning approach as opposed to what you might do, say, in Microsoft Project. From a service management area, you might come in here and just start logging requests. Well, let me go back here. If we go in here, you could actually submit from a central place new different types of work requests. As you go through and put new requests in, you can actually have different request types, whether they be incidents or service requests, problems, tickets, whatever it might be. Characterize them. They could be triaged and assigned to people based upon the type of comments or the type of work that it is. And the idea is you can start building a list or a log of all of these kind of unplanned, more operational service requests. Once again, by assigning them to specific resources and putting effort estimates against those, we can actually make this a part of someone's total workload as they're going through this solution. So when they actually go in here and they go into a My Work area, the service request would be included in there as well as all of the other types of work that we have. So if we went in here and looked at a little more broad-based capability, we have just enhanced our My Work area to do a few other things nicely, like being able to quickly complete tasks by just clicking a checkbox like you see here. Notice that we have all work types in here: action items, change requests, issues, project tasks, etc. The project tasks could all be coming from Project Server, but all the other work items could be coming from EPM Live and WorkEngine, but all into this user singular work bin. If you wanted to report time against this type of work, you have a full timesheet in here that allows you to record time on project and non-project work alike. As you can see, a simple example, just issues and tasks here reporting time on. Could actually subdivide the time into things like billable or non-billable, or other ways you might want to put notes in against these time entry pieces. But a very simple way to, in an integrated fashion, extend the elements that you'd report time on beyond just your project tasks like in Project Server. And the level of detail and the number of work items and the types of work items you can put in here are much more varied. From a resource center perspective, as we start looking at assigning all those tasks, it could be Agile, traditional project tasks from Project Server, it could be service requests, etc. If I really go in and I start looking at the resource planning, I could start looking at either groups of resources like by department or individual resources like this Steve Masters I'm in here as. And I can actually view a resource plan that's going to incorporate all these things here. It's basically going to roll up from all the workspaces and all the work items that are in this solution. And it looks like Steve has a lot more work out in this time frame out here. So if you really expand this out, you can see that this graph here, not unlike what you get in Project Server from a histogram perspective, but also notice that the work types here are based upon things like operational tasks and service requests, action items, risks, project tasks, etc., across multiple projects or multiple efforts. And what's nice about in here is that you can start looking at this workload and you can start doing things like moving workload around and seeing if we can backfill certain work to, like in this case, it looks like this piece of work here is an over-allocation by itself. We might want to stretch it out a little bit longer to get it under his capacity. And the idea is that we can save these scenarios without changing the detailed work. We can actually analyze this and basically see if we can find a workable work mix for Steve, or do this on a project-by-project basis. But adding this interactive kind of what-if capability is something that we enhance beyond what Project Server is doing out of the box. And obviously the different types of work that we can roll up with our roll-up web parts. If I was going to look here with the roll-up grid Gantt, if I wanted to look at issues across all projects without having to go to each individual project workspace, here I've got all the issues from all the different projects. Now if I go back to my Project Center, we did mention that we had some portfolio capabilities we can add to the Project Server mix. So here, the projects and the work that got generated from within Project Server are listed as portfolio items here. We can actually go into a specific portfolio item and, for example, build a capacity plan. This capacity plan would give us the ability at a high level, long before we have a project schedule, as I mentioned earlier, and really build a resource-based plan for each of our portfolio items, even if they're just proposed portfolio items that don't have any real schedule detail behind them yet. I think I have one that's pre-built in here. Hold on. So here in a very simple grid interface, and this is the type of FTE-based plans people tend to be doing off to the side in spreadsheets right now. But here for this particular project or proposed project, we can just plan these things out on a role basis like this. So here it's basically saying my ask on this as a project manager would be required for 25% of their time over a 3-month period. A developer full-time over a 3-month period, etc. And the idea is that we can build those capacity plans. We could also at some point choose from, say, a role or a department, do some matches or other types of advanced searches for these resources, and determine who might be an available fit for this particular project to fulfill that role. So in this case, in doing a match, it would bring up candidates that have different levels of match based upon their role in their department and their remaining availability. Here it looks like Alan is a good fit for this, where I could say Alan can now become, I can promote Alan to now become the resource to fill this project manager role as part of this capacity planning mix. And we can do this planning in FTEs, we can do it in hours, whatever makes the most sense for you. Same thing holds true with detailed cost planning. Any one of these projects now, and we can add this to any project server portfolio item, is the ability to go in and build a detailed cost plan. If I select a project and open up the cost plan, we can actually build different cost plans. In this case, I'm looking at a budget, and that budget has got some labor categories that are built up by hours times a rate to come up with a cost. This could just as easily be toggled to FTEs if we want to do it in FTEs instead of hours. And we also have the hard dollar values in here. The idea between all the labor categories, all the hard dollar categories, these are all time-phased line item detail that support a total budget number that could become the budget for this project. And as we go on through our time reporting, which is integrated fully into the actuals, as well as actuals we may get from our financial or ERP system, I can actually compare, say, for example, budget versus actuals by showing a reference copy and saying, okay, let me look at the actuals in comparison to my budget. And now I can see what I've actually spent in these categories compared to what we thought we were going to spend. Once again, these are easy to deploy add-ins, very simply added to the mix and enhancing and providing value to what you may be already doing with Project Server. Now, the other piece I guess I was going to show you on that is if we have those capacity plans and those budgets built, what if I wanted to look at all of the proposed and active projects and determine what can we really do within this solution? I can actually go in and go into the modeler, and from the selected portfolio items, load up the potential projects along with the active projects we're currently embarked on. And really provide me a tool that I can do some scenario planning. I apologize, looks like my network connection is a little slow right now. So we can open up a model based upon the portfolio items that we selected. And based upon that model, here's all the projects I selected. Here's the time phasing of those from a Gantt chart perspective. I can actually have, prioritizations and other metadata around these projects to help me in my selection process. And I can also then say, overlay a target or a budget or a resource capacity plan over this so that when we can apply this, it can actually show us in more of a heat map type of format where, down below here, we may be over or under budget. So here I'm looking at the cost categories we budgeted to, and I can see where, according to doing all of these projects, I would be overspent from my budget in order to make those things happen. I could also look at these just from a capacity planning perspective, from an FTE perspective, and I can see where I'm short on headcount in these different roles in order to make these things happen. And what's nice about this is I could start doing things, for example, like deselecting the lower priority projects. Might be one thing to do. So let's just say we don't do those projects, but we still have issues. I could then go down and say, now what we need to do is potentially slide out a project out or two farther in time. As you can see, I'm relieving myself of some of the requirement here. So now, between a deselection of projects and a staging of projects a little differently in time phasing, I can maybe do something that's doable over this horizon. I could actually save or copy versions of these what-if scenarios so I can compare different alternatives and really have an intelligent selection basis on which to do this. What's nice about this, it's kind of an automated assist method, but it's very, let's just say, trustworthy in the fact that you're making changes and you understand exactly what you've done. You understand that you've deselected a project. You understand that you've moved a project out in time. You can actually take different subcomponents, and for example, you could take a different phase of a project, different piece of a project, and move those subcomponents out. So the idea here is a lot of ways you can go in here to actually arrive at a portfolio that you can sell to the organization and something that's actually achievable. The reporting that we talk about here in our report center, we can actually go and run out-of-the-box SQL reports that we provide to you. By no means are you limited from modifying these or adding more report formats to your library. Our charting web parts are here, which are nice because they extend it by looking at project work by type. So you might have different types of work or things that are not just project tasks. You might have, metrics on service requests, etc. For example, in the service request area, if I went to the report center in the service request area, the metrics that you have for service requests might be totally different than what you're looking at for the project work. So you might want to look at open requests and what's overdue and request by type and sense of urgency. The idea is all this charting is available for you very easily, and it's all editable so that you can actually change the parameters of the data elements, etc., very easily. Our SQL reporting services, report formats, are things that are nice where you can just actually run a predefined format for things like a project status report and be able to get that information very quickly. And they can include project and non-project work for different types of report formats that you want. And the idea is that you can view them in this online viewer, or you can put them out to common formats like PDF, Word, etc. So let's transition back here. I think the idea how WorkEngine from EPM Lab enhances the project server experience is we do a lot of things in different areas. I think first and foremost, it really allows you to manage different types of work beyond just the traditional waterfall tasks from a traditional precedent schedule in Microsoft Project that's published to Project Server. We can also publish Microsoft Project schedules to SharePoint lists and Project Workspaces and intermingle that work with all other types of work that are being managed out in SharePoint and in WorkEngine. From a resource management perspective, we add a lot of what-if modeling, interactive what-if modeling on all work. Printable resource management reports, and we can leverage SharePoint workflows on resource work and assignments very easily. From a cost management perspective, we showed you the cost planning and budgeting pieces that we can do that incorporate different types of work, so you can build costs and budgets around project work, operational work, other product development work, etc., all in one mix. The flexible time management and timesheet, the enhanced reporting and out-of-the-box reporting templates and charting web parts that we provide, the work management, the My Work area that can actually roll together all types of work into a single work bin for each user is something that's a nice enhancement, and it makes it simple for a user to participate. From a configuration perspective, we can build flexible site hierarchies in your project workspaces and your workspaces in WorkEngine. And we can also publish multiple projects to single project workspaces for more program management and capturing all the different schedules you might have. We even have the capability potentially to publish a waterfall type of project plan with a Agile plan. We have folks that, for example, they may do initial investigation and onboarding of the project and investigation and design work in a more waterfall fashion. But then when development comes around and we're in that stage, they might want to manage the work in a more agile, scrum, iterative approach, and then maybe finish out and roll out the project and the product in a more waterfall fashion again. So we give you the ability to use different planning methods and different work management methods even within the same project. And then on the SharePoint basis, cross-platform support for both PCs, Macs, and Safari, Firefox, and Chrome browsers is something that, that we help add to the mix here as well. With that, I'd say check us out at epmlive.com. WorkEngine and Portfolio Engine really provide the tool sets that we discussed here today. You can actually sign up and request a free trial, access to an online demo environment where you can do some of these things for yourself. And just contact us through the website, and we're happy to fulfill any requests that you might have and help you explore and see if this might be a good fit for you. For those of you that have Project Server in the mix today, hopefully we showed you how Project Server can be extended, how we can enhance it and add capabilities to it, and really just leverage the strength of Project Server, but really provide additional capabilities to make it an all-work platform. With that, I'd like to say thank you for joining us this morning. Feel free to contact us if you want to answer any direct questions about what we have, and hope you all have a great day.